Hello and welcome to the Summit on Content Marketing. I am your host, Alan Sharp, and I am pleased to introduce Dan Gingiss. Dan is the author of the new book, Winning at Social Customer Care: How Top Brands Create Engaging Experiences on Social Media. He is also the host of the Focus on Customer Service podcast, where he interviews leaders from companies that are renowned for outstanding customer service in social media. Dan is talking to us today about customers write the best content, how to translate social customer service into great marketing. Dan, welcome to the Summit on Content Marketing, and over to you.
Well, thanks, Alan. Really glad to be here, and I'm excited about this presentation, in part because I'm actually a career marketer, and so the first thing that I want all of your viewers to know is that it really is important that marketers care about customer service. And frankly, the other way around as well. So you may take a look at this title and say, customer service, that's not for me because I'm a marketer. And I'm hoping that after you watch the presentation that you'll think differently at the end and understand that especially social customer service is a great, great way to create really good content marketing. So how about we get started? So first I want to ask you, do you ever feel like your content marketing strategy looks like this? Here you got a bullseye, and some of your content is smack in the middle, and it's exactly what your readers are looking for. But unfortunately, in order to get there, you have to create all this other content that some people are interested in, or maybe a few people are interested in, or sometimes you're off the mark and almost no one's interested. The other thing that I noticed about this picture is there's a lot of holes, which means that there's a lot of content being created. And again, some of it's going to be hits and some of it's going to be misses. I'm hoping that today we can talk about how to make more of them hits. Because I think that a better way to approach your content marketing is to focus on the customer. And if you focus on the customer, you're going to end up with content that your customer has asked for and therefore really desires. Or even better, you're going to end up with content that your customer didn't even know they needed, but you were able to anticipate and deliver to them. A lot of content marketing strategies start with a company trying to decide what to push out to their customer. What I'd like to suggest to you today is that you listen to your customer and have them tell you how to do your marketing. Now, the way to do that is to start with the experience. We're going to talk a little bit about customer experience because it's not something that all marketers are really knowledgeable about or frankly have to pay a lot of attention to. So to start with that, I want to start with a basic definition of what customer experience is. Customer experience is how customers feel about every single interaction with your brand. Now you'll notice that I have some words here that are in red, and that is because they are important. The first one is feel. And the reason why that one is so important is because, frankly, feeling is believing, or as is said, perception is reality. So, for example, if you think that you have the greatest mobile app in the world, but your customers feel that it's difficult to use, then the answer is it's difficult to use. No matter what your IT people tell you, no matter what your marketing people tell you, if your customers think it's difficult, then it's difficult. The other part is that the experience is about every single interaction with your brand. And I think that most companies miss this because so many companies are set up in silos that every person in the company is responsible for one piece of the experience, but there's very few people that are looking across the entire experience. I'm here to tell you that your customers don't care how you're organized in your company. They don't care what your job is versus the guy sitting next to you. They're experiencing your company in a different way, and they're taking every interaction that they have with you, whether it be in the mail, on the phone, on the web, in social media, in person, or anywhere else, and they're putting it all together to formulate an opinion of your brand. Let's look at a hypothetical example of a fast food restaurant. Now, if I asked you what is the most important part of the customer experience for a fast food restaurant, many of you would probably say the food. And in a way, you'd be right. A fast food restaurant with terrible food does not have very many customers. However, if you stopped the conversation at that point, you'd be missing out on so many other things that formulate the customer experience that go beyond the food. Let me give you some examples. Have you ever gotten to a parking lot and not been able to find a space? especially if you're with kids, and now you've parked what seems like a mile away, and it's snowing out, and you arrive at the restaurant, and you're in a bad mood before you even walk in the door. So the parking lot has a lot to do with your experience. How about the person that's taking your order and eventually serving you the meal? Have you ever approached a fast food counter and the person behind it looks like they're too disturbed to talk to you, like you're interrupting their otherwise pleasant day? How does that make you feel? Did the person smile at you and welcome you? Did they get your order right? And did it arrive in a speedy fashion? Let's look at other things around us, like the temperature. Have you ever sat in a restaurant near the door on a cold winter's day where every time the door opens a big gust of wind comes through and you're frozen solid? That's not a really comfortable place to eat lunch, and that will affect how you feel about the overall experience. Or how about the temperature of your food? Have you ever received a fast food hamburger knowing that it had been sitting under the heat lamp for a while and it doesn't quite feel fresh to you? Now, I used to work in the credit card industry, so this one is particularly important to me. Was your method of payment available? Now, this is a funny image because, of course, every place is going to take cash. But if you wanted to use a certain credit card, or if you wanted to use Apple Pay or Android Pay, did they accept that? Were you able to pay with the way that you wanted to pay, not the way that the restaurant wanted? How about condiments? I always wonder why so many restaurants, especially fast food restaurants, hide the napkins. I mean, they're serving greasy food, and so people are going to need napkins, but the napkins are notoriously difficult to find. Is there enough ketchup and mustard available? Are there forks and spoons and straws and anything else that you need? This has a big effect on your experience because if you can't find those things, your experience is lessened. And of course, for those of us that have kids, we know that one of the top things that affects the experience is the quality of the toy in the kids' meal. Because when the kids are happy, so are we. So all of these things are the physical elements that play into how somebody experiences a fast food restaurant. We haven't even gotten into the digital space yet, so let's talk about that as well. Does the restaurant have a website where I can view their menu ahead of time, perhaps place an order because I'm in a hurry and want to be able to just run in and pick it up? Is that website mobile-friendly or tablet-friendly so that I can access it on the device that I'm interested in? When I go around the web and I see advertisements, are they useful to me? Are they targeted at me? Do they arrive at a time that makes sense to me? When I see an ad for pizza or for burgers, do I think to myself, man, how do they know that I have a taste for pizza or burgers right now? Or do they arrive at a time where I'm eating my breakfast bagel and it's really irrelevant to me? And by the way, this is both an online and an offline thing, as anyone who's ever had a pizza ad stuffed into their doorknob at home can attest to. And of course, one of the things that I'm here to talk to you about is social media. And a company's social media presence is playing a much bigger role in the overall experience of the brand. Because social media, what it has done is has moved a lot of the power over to the customer. Customers are now able to amplify their experience by sharing it in social media, and they're doing so over and over again at a somewhat alarming rate to a lot of companies. How companies respond on social media, or even if they respond on social media, greatly impact the overall experience. So we have what is really a circular relationship. Now, I want to start by talking about this idea of customers sharing on social media. And to bring it back to this conference, which is about content marketing, I want to posit to you that this is the part where content is actually created by your customers. And really what your job is to seek it out. Now, to get there, I want to talk to you about why people share on social media and when they share, because this is really critical to understanding the pieces of your company's customer experience that are going to end up on social media at one point or another. So I've developed a very simple equation, and don't worry if you don't like math. I think you can probably handle this one. It is that customer expectations plus emotions equal a willingness to share. Let me demonstrate how this works. When companies exceed expectations, they make their customers happy, and people are very much willing to share their happiness on social media. I'm sure you've seen on Facebook or Twitter people talking about a great experience that they've had with a brand. Maybe there was a surprise and delight. Maybe they got something extra with their meal. Maybe there was a particularly good customer service engagement, or somebody came out to the house and was particularly friendly. We're willing to share these when they exceed our expectations. Now, when companies just meet our expectations, we kind of feel in the middle, or as the millennials might say, we feel meh. We're not happy, we're not sad, it doesn't really matter to us much, and so there's really no reason for us to share an experience like that. However, when companies miss expectations, that makes us sad or at times angry, and both of those emotions are going to lead us to want to share a lot. And certainly, if you've watched the news in the last few weeks, you've seen some very high-profile brands have some very high-profile expectation misses about their experience, and you see what happens on social media, and those kind of stories get repeated over and over again. So now I want to share with you what I call some signs of the times. These are signs, literal signs, that I've taken a picture of just walking around in my daily life. And what's important about the fact that these are all photos is they're taken from my camera. They're taken from a camera that everybody else has in their pocket as well, which is a smartphone. And one of the things that companies are realizing is that the importance of the offline experience has grown so much now that any part of that experience can be photographed and shared online. Now, I haven't shared all of these photos online on social media, but they're all shareable photos for different reasons. And as you look at them, I want you to think about what you might feel about that brand, because we talked about how the experience is about how customers feel about your brand and about every single interaction. And remember that a sign in your physical location is an interaction. So let's start with a sign that I absolutely love that I just saw. This is the newest one in my collection. I just saw it walking down the street in New York City. This was a retailer, and I saw this sign. We are probably the lowest priced in the city. Probably. That word makes me laugh every time, especially because that O is a little bit off center. This is the most honest sign I think I've ever seen. And to be honest with you, I'm not even sure what kind of business this is. But when I see a sign like that, I want to do business with this company because they have a sense of humor, because they're honest, and because, frankly, they are inviting me in with a sign like this. So I absolutely love this sign. Now let's compare this to another fast food restaurant here, where this is the very first sign that I saw when I walked in before I could even see the menu board. We cannot provide any courtesy cups. Now, I have a lot to say about this sign, but the first thing that came to my mind was that cannot was the wrong word. It wasn't that they could not provide any courtesy cups. It's that they will not provide any courtesy cups. The second thing is, I was left wondering, why are they not providing any courtesy cups? A courtesy cup probably cost them a penny, 2 pennies. And if they're that cheap about not providing courtesy cups, where else are they cutting corners? Those tomatoes in the refrigerator, have they maybe been sitting there a couple more days than they should have? Am I going to get skimped on the meat on my sandwich because they want to save some money by giving me 3 slices instead of 4? What other things are they doing to cut costs? And do any of them involve the employees and their cleanliness and all of a sudden I've lost my appetite? All because of a sign that has set my expectations to be really low, frankly, and that is not particularly welcoming at all. Now here's another one from a gas station right down the street from my house that I absolutely love. Assistance available when 2 cashiers are on duty. Now my first thought here was, well, apparently now the employee scheduling of this gas station has become my problem as the customer. And obviously if there's only 1 cashier on duty, I'm not getting any help. Now, I do have somewhat of a quirky sense of humor, so the next thought I had was, well, what happens if there's 3 cashiers on duty? And do I receive any assistance then? Now, I know what you're saying. There's probably a good reason for this sign. There's probably a security reason. If there's only one cashier, they can't leave the cash register, etc. And you know what? That's all fine and good. But as the customer, do you really care about that? Is that something that is your problem? Or if you need assistance at the gas station, do you just want assistance? And if you need assistance and you can't get assistance, what do you think happens next? Especially given that in lots of places, there's another gas station literally on the same corner. So signs like this do not help to attract or maintain customers. In fact, they turn them away. Now, you might think that a sign like this actually lowers a customer's expectation, so that if there was only one cashier on duty and I still received assistance, that might be a surprise and delight. I argue that that's not the case because, as we'll see in a bit, social media has really caused customer expectations to increase to really unprecedented levels, and I don't think that customer expectations are going to be lowered that quickly just by seeing a sign like this. Well, before I go on to more signs, I want to just go back and reiterate why we're talking about these. In case you haven't figured out, these signs are content. Now, you may not think of them that way, but they absolutely are content that are created by companies and they are put in front of customers. Content that is created by a company and put in front of customers. Sounds like content marketing to me. Maybe not in the way that we always think about it, but as we get into the digital space later on in the presentation, you'll understand why this stuff is just as important. Because after all, if our experience includes every interaction that we have with a brand, we have to look offline as well to have a better understanding of the full experience. Now let's look at two hotel signs. Here's one. Does anybody want to stay at this motel? This sign certainly doesn't really welcome you, does it? Now, look, I'm not making any declarations about whether all hotels have to have Wi-Fi or not. But if you don't have Wi-Fi, is that really the first thing that you want to tell people? I mean, before even a, hey, welcome to our motel, we want to just start with no Wi-Fi? This is not exactly a way to encourage customers to come into your motel. Now, this one's just a little bit humorous, but I love it anyway. Please be advised that leaving your sliding door open may result in the entry of pigeons into the room. Now, not only is this sign fabulously written, but it makes me laugh every time. And again, I love its honesty, and I feel like that this hotel is actually looking out for me. Because sure enough, it was a beautiful day. I had just opened the sliding door, was looking outside, and then I rethought that decision. So I really appreciated that this sign was there for me and really talking to me at the moment that I needed it. Again, we wish our content marketing could always do the same. I want to share some other examples with you that are not about signs, but are still in the offline experience. And I promise if you hang with me, we're going to come back online, and you're going to see the connection here to why this is so important about content marketing. So my wife and I were in a hotel in Las Vegas. It was a fancy hotel, and it had a really nice pastry shop. We had ordered some coffee and some muffins, and when we were done eating, I went over to bust my tray to the garbage can. Yes, we have devolved into talking about garbage cans. So I see this garbage can, and it's built into the counter, and it might be a little hard to see in this picture, but the thing that stuck out to me immediately was how big it was. Now, if you've been to a coffee shop lately, especially the large chains, you usually see this garbage can that's basically the width of a single cup. And it's difficult to get anything bigger into it. You certainly can't dump a tray into it. So I dumped our trash into this can and noticed that it very easily slid off the tray and right into the can. On a whim, I decided to try something else. I tried to see whether I could dump the tray into the garbage can. Guess what? I couldn't. The tray didn't fit. And it was at that moment that I realized that this restaurant had actually given some thought to the experience of getting rid of your trash at the restaurant. Now, it seems like an inconsequential experience, but a lot of experiences are like that when they go well, customers don't even notice it. It's when they go poorly that they notice it. Think about the last time that you went to put something in the garbage can, and there was a garbage can that was so overflowing, you literally could not put a single other item in it. How does that affect your experience? Whereas in this case, the designers actually solved for two problems. They solved for the customer problem of having to dump a bunch of garbage into a can and not wanting to have to deal with a tiny little opening. But they also dealt with the restaurant's problem of not wanting to lose their trays. Have you ever been into a hot dog restaurant where there's a sign on top of the garbage can that says, "Please do not throw away our baskets"? Why do you need a sign like that if you have something as elegantly designed as this? Now let's stay in the hotel industry, and I want to talk to you about a hotel that I stay at quite often. I'm a frequent traveler, and I've been in this particular hotel a bunch of times, so I noticed that they changed the sinks in the bathroom. They upgraded to a fancier faucet. And I noticed it simply because I had been there enough times. I kind of knew the change. I didn't think much of it other than to say, hey, nice faucet, until I went to iron my shirt. And there's me on the left and the right doing everything I can to get the iron underneath the faucet. And guess what? It didn't fit. So I couldn't fill my iron. What did I do? I actually ended up having to I cupped my hands, and I filled my hands with water, a few drops at a time, cupping my hands and pouring it into the iron. It took a long time, but I had to iron my shirt. And this frustrated me. And so it ended up creating a negative experience for me when the intention of it was to create a positive experience. After all, they were putting in fancy faucets to create a positive experience. But the guy that was in charge of faucets and the guy that was in charge of irons didn't talk to each other, and so they didn't solve for what is, frankly, a fairly basic issue, right? If you think about a hotel sink and you think about the use cases of what people are going to do in a hotel sink, there's really only a couple of use cases that make sense. It's not like I was trying to make macaroni and cheese in the sink, right? You brush your teeth, you wash your face, maybe some people wash an item of clothing, you fill up the coffee carafe, and you fill up the iron. Those are basically the things you do in a hotel sink. And so by missing that, they've inadvertently created a negative experience. Now, is this something that's going to get shared on social media and become viral? No. But the underlying point is that these are the things that we want to pay attention to so that our experience is great, and so great that people want to share the positive things, thereby literally creating our content marketing for us. Here's an example that you're probably familiar with, maybe both of these. These are both on the same airline, and the left is a plug in order to plug in your phone that is literally underneath the seat, and in order to get to it, you have to pretty much do an acrobatic move where you put your head between your knees. You have to probably turn on the flashlight on your phone to even see the plug. You have to stretch and strain in order to get the plug in. It tends to be a very loose plug, so it falls right out. And oh, by the way, you're doing all this about 6 inches from somebody else's feet. So not the best experience. Again, I know the engineers in the audience are going to tell me, well, we had to put the plug there because we were retrofitting an old plane and blah, blah, blah. As a customer, don't care. Now you look on the right and you see, well, hey, now they figured it out. They put the plug right behind the tray table, right in front of me, where I don't have to disturb my neighbor or smell their feet, and I can get the plug in really easily. This is the difference between an experience that misses expectations and an experience that exceeds one. Last example, this is a supermarket chain up in Minnesota called Byerly's. It's a high-end chain. And you know when you go to Byerly's that you're going to spend a little bit more money. But I thought this was really interesting, and a friend of mine just pointed this out to me a couple of weeks ago. Look at the parking slots, and look at the fact that there are these sort of broad lines between them. And what they're doing is they're actually creating more space between the cars. Do you know what my friend told me? He said, I never minded paying more at Byerly's because I knew that I wouldn't get my car dinged in the parking lot. Now, how much do you think it cost them to draw those lines in a little bit different way to create a little bit more space to reduce the chance of a ding in the parking lot? And compare that to what my friend and others are willing to pay more at this supermarket because of the experience. What this says to me is that somebody has thought really hard about the experience starting in the parking lot. Remember, I showed you the parking lot of the fast food restaurant as well. And it says to me this is going to be a good experience when I walk in the door because these people have thought about my comfort and my needs. All right, so if you haven't caught this by now, my message to you is that if you don't get the offline experience right, you're going to suffer the consequences in social media. The flip side of that is if you do get the offline experience right, your customers are going to talk about it, and they're going to share great things on social media that can become your content. However, I'm also going to share with you that if you continue to get it wrong and people are talking negatively about you, that too can actually be converted into content. So, what's the answer? Stop talking to us about the problem, Dan, and help us with the answer. Well, for the answer, I turn to the great sage, and that is World Series champion Chicago Cubs manager Joe Maddon. And he says, do simple better. Now, of course, when he tells his team this, he's talking about baseball. He's talking about making the simple play at shortstop, laying down the bunt, or running out a hit to first base. But I believe that do simple better is actually a terrific mantra for businesses and a great way to exceed customer expectations in their experience. I want to share with you some examples of doing simple better, and I want you to think about those in comparison to some of the ones that I shared previously. Now, for the first one, I want you to imagine dialing in to a conference call. We've all done it. We call in, we enter in our passcode, and the next thing we hear is the droning on of horrible music, usually elevator music, sometimes some old, 60s station playing You Can't Hurry Love or something like that, and often extremely repetitive, excruciatingly repetitive, so that we are just dying for the other person to get on the phone. I want you to imagine a scenario in which you dial in and actually hope that the other person on the line doesn't dial in. And that's what happened when I dialed into a conference call and I heard this by singer-songwriter Alex Cornell.
Well, I've been sitting here all day. I've been sitting in this waiting room. And I've been waiting on my friends. Yes, I'm waiting on this conference call. All alone. And I'm on hold. Well, yes, I'm on hold. I hope it's not all day. Hey! Well, I wonder where they are. Yes, I wonder where my friends have gone. Where'd they go? Tell me, where could they be while I'm waiting on this conference call? I don't know. Well, I'm holding on my phone. Yes, I'm holding on the line. Hey!
Now tell me that you were hoping that I wasn't going to stop that song because you wanted to hear the rest of those lyrics. That's exactly what I felt. I didn't want the person on the other line to pick up. I was literally tapping my feet and strumming my fingers on the table along with this song. What a way to exceed my expectations for an experience that is usually incredibly mundane. In fact, it's one we don't even think about. But now I've thought about conference calls in a completely different way. And the message here is that there's a way to wow people at every part of the experience, but you have to rethink it. Here's a different example. You ever get an email from a company, and at the bottom of the email there's this lengthy legal disclaimer that basically says, if you are the unintended recipient of this email, you must delete it immediately and never read it, and we never actually sent it to you upon death of your first child, etc., etc., etc. Well, I understand the necessity for those. But does anybody actually read them? Or do they just kind of see all the words and think, the lawyers again, and breeze right past it? Well, let me ask you this. What would happen if you looked at the end of an email and saw a legal disclaimer, but the first line said covering our butts? Well, that's exactly what happened when I received an email from a company called iFlix, which is the Asian version of Netflix. Covering our butts. Holy cow, I want to read this. And I started reading it, and I underlined some of the fun stuff for you so you don't have to read the whole thing. But the whole thing is interesting and funny. And yet, it still includes all the legalese that the lawyers asked for. For example, in the middle you can say that it says that you can't disseminate. It explains what disseminate means, which is pretty nice because a lot of people probably don't know. How many times have you looked at legalese from a credit card company or a healthcare company or somebody else and just read it shaking your head saying, I don't even know what this means? Even those of us that download software updates from one of our big providers and end up having to say yes to a 70-page document that they know we're not going to read. Imagine an experience where people want to read the legal disclaimer, and imagine what you could do with that as a content marketer. So again, take a completely mundane experience and turn it into something memorable, and in this case, using words, which is what content marketers do. I got one more for you. We're going to go back to the hotel industry. I have a friend, his name is Eric Tong, and he was going to stay at a hotel for a social media conference. And as he was filling out all the information online, he saw a box that said special requests. And he thought to himself, I wonder if they read this box. And so he decided to test it out. And he typed in that he wanted a picture of a pickle and a chocolate bar when he arrived. This was actually weeks before he ended up showing up to the hotel. So imagine his surprise when he showed up and there was a letter in his room with a picture of a pickle, some crayons to color it in, and a Snickers bar. Included was a letter, Dear Eric Tong, welcome. When we were looking over your reservation, we noticed that you were requesting a picture of a pickle and a piece of chocolate to enjoy. Here at the Manchester Grand Hyatt San Diego, we want to make sure your needs aren't just met, they're exceeded. Have fun coloring in this pickle and enjoy your time at Social Media Marketing World. Let us know if you need anything else. Eric, of course, takes a picture of this and goes to Twitter, where he says, ever wonder if companies read those extra request boxes? Grand Hyatt San Diego does. Hashtag customer service, hashtag the conference hashtag. By the way, this is a social media conference, so there are thousands of people following this hashtag. Not to mention the fact that Eric Tong has 146,000 followers on Twitter. You can see at the bottom the number of retweets and favorites. This was a story that was told over and over and over again. Isn't that what you hope for all of your content marketing? And yet this story was told by Eric Tong, which makes it even more valuable because, as we all know, people trust their friends and family and other people more than they trust brands, more than they trust CEOs of brands. So if Eric Tong can be talking about the Grand Hyatt San Diego, that goes a lot further than the Grand Hyatt San Diego talking about the Grand Hyatt San Diego. So in this case, simply by exceeding their customers' expectations, Grand Hyatt San Diego has created some enormously powerful content marketing that's been delivered by one of their customers. And that's the brilliance. And I'm telling you here today that every one of your companies has the ability to do the same thing. So now I want to turn this around a little bit. And I want to talk about how what happens on social media comes back to sort of reinforce and impact that overall customer experience. Because as we said at the beginning, customer experience includes every single interaction. So when something's shared on social, what the brand does next plays a really big role. And in this case, I would posit that this is content that is created by brands for customers. Sometimes it's for one customer, sometimes it's for many customers. But this is really the essence of how we take customer service and turn it into content marketing. Let's look at an example. Spotify, which you probably know is a music download service, received this tweet from Steve, who said, Spotify, you guys had one job. And he highlights, ironically, some legalese that was included when he signed up, and he underlines, this is his underline, the red line there, the word authorize. Now, we can surmise that what he's pointing out is that the spelling of authorize is not the American English version. And unfortunately, poor Steve did not know that there was a British version. And so he is claiming to Spotify that they've missed the mark and misspelled a word. Spotify's answer, which I would argue is some of the best content marketing I've ever seen, is this. Hi, Steve. Thanks for bringing this to us. Maybe we can explain why this happened. And you'll notice there's a link. The link is to a Spotify playlist. This is one of the best examples I've ever seen of a company using their own product in service, and I would also argue in marketing. Here's the playlist. And if you read the playlist from the top to the bottom, you will notice that it is the answer to Steve's question. Hey, Steve. Tantalizing. We would like to apologize for the impromptu English lesson. We were just trying to bring a little color to your day. Shout if there's anything else. I'm off to catch an aeroplane. How awesome is that? By the way, the playlist is entitled Thanks, Steve. Not surprisingly, Steve, perhaps with tail between his legs, comes back and says, "This is amazing. Thank you, Spotify. Heart emoji." So here we took a guy that started off as a sarcastic detractor of the brand, and we turned him into somebody who now loves the brand. Isn't that what our content marketing is trying to do? Convince people to like our brand. I'm going to give you another example now, and this is from my former employer, Discover Card. This is a guy that wrote on Facebook, "I was late on my Discover Card payment by 1 day, which jacked up my rate considerably. I called, and I was willing to take responsibility for it since it's my fault. I just wanted to cancel a few other services and offset extra fees. Jamie," in quotes, as if he doesn't believe that Jamie's name is real, "said she would take care of it, and since it was only 1 day late, she would reset my interest rate to what it was, and I agreed to keep the other services that I had. We'll see what happens." Now, Discover writes back and says, "Gary, I've reviewed your account, and the representative you spoke with has completed all the adjustments, just as promised. Please allow 48 hours, etc., etc." Gary responds back and says, "Thank you so much for all of your help. I appreciate everything." But it doesn't end there. A different person pops in and says, "Wow, very impressed with that service." And another person pops in and says, "Wow, and I've cut it off." But more people popped in, and they observed this interaction. And they said, "Wow, this is a company I want to do business with." Now, two things have happened here. Number one is we've made a happy customer in Gary. The other thing, though, is that these onlookers, these are people who might be experiencing our brand for the first time. Isn't that what content marketing is supposed to do? Is talk to people about our brand and convince them that they want to do business with us? And here, Discover Card did a great job just by responding to a customer and making sure that this problem was resolved. Now, another example that happened with Discover and Twitter, and this is another one of my favorites, we have a guy that says, "I haven't checked my mail in a few days, and there are 3 offers for the Discover It card: persistence or lack of coordination." Now, at Discover, we taught the agents to try to mimic back the tone of the customer when appropriate, and I thought this agent did a terrific job with just a tiny hint of sarcasm, like the original poster said. She writes back, "We must be excited to have you apply. DM us with your full name and full address if you'd like the mailings to stop. From Amy." So she did 2 things. Number 1, she was playful back to him, and number 2, she did attempt to solve his problem by offering him the option to DM. He writes back and says, "At Discover, kudos for the prompt response time. Okay, I'll bite, mostly because of your response, Amy. Hashtag great service." So let's review. This guy started off angry at Discover because there was too much mail in his mailbox, and he ended up becoming Discover's newest customer. And all of this happened in 13 minutes. Can you imagine if all the content marketing that you work on and spend time writing could convert people into sales in 13 minutes? That's exactly what happened here. And I'll tell you, this is not just a one-off, because statistic after statistic has shown that one of the best ways to grow engagement in social media is to engage in customer service. So this chart shows you what happens after a customer service interaction is completed on Facebook or Twitter. So you write to a brand writes back and solves your problem, and now we start the clock and we say, what happens next? What kind of engagement rate do we get? Likes, clicks, comments, retweets, etc. And what you can see is that on Twitter, you see engagement rates of over 100%. And even on Facebook, where they're a little bit lower, and I have seen over 100% in Facebook, you're still seeing high double-digit engagement rates. Now, I will ask the question even though I know the answer. How many of your content marketing pieces can you say get engagement rates of high double digits to triple digits? By the way, what does a triple digit mean? It means that there was more than one additional engagement point for every single customer service interaction. That could be the original customer responding again, saying, hey, thanks, you're great, Spotify. It also could be those other people jumping in saying, wow, this is cool, wow, this is great. So this is an incredible way to grow engagement rate that even marketers would be somewhat envious of. Now, I don't usually like to call out companies that mess up, but I want to show you this example because I think it's really important to explain how things can also go wrong on social media. Amanda Carpenter is a conservative commentator, and she found herself, unfortunately, trapped in an Amtrak elevator at BWI Airport. She tweets out to Amtrak, guys, I'm trapped, help. And Amtrak responds and says, we're sorry to hear that. Are you still in the elevator? Now, this is a pretty good response. Not that big of a deal. Only one tiny, tiny little problem. They responded 7 months later. Oh, boy. And you see, that doesn't quite meet customer expectations. And what do you think happened? A lot of content marketing. Unfortunately, not the content that Amtrak was hoping for. It was the lead story on Mashable. It was a big story on the Today Show. And all of these unfortunate memes of Amanda started circulating around the internet. The most amazing part about this is if you go back to the original tweet, Amtrak actually did answer. And they said, BW agents are aware of you and are working to get you out. And they answered on the same day. It was about an hour later. This was never reported in any of those news stories. This is why it is so critical for us to do social customer care right. When we do it right, we get examples of customers sharing their experience and creating content for us that drives engagement rates that we can't possibly achieve on our own. When we screw it up, we also have content created for us, but it is a PR person's worst nightmare content, and that's not the type of content that we want. Now, I also want to very quickly talk to you a little bit about bots. So there's a lot of discussion about bots lately and how they're going to be the future of customer service, and this is something that really worries me because bots are really starting to combine content and service. And I want to share with you an example. This is a major flower retailer. And they created a bot on Facebook, which frankly is content marketing. It is aimed at having people buy flowers on Facebook Messenger. So you go in and you select a bouquet, and I had chosen a thank you arrangement, and I chose the delightful daffodil, as you can see by the little red dot indicating where I clicked. And it said, okay, you've selected a delightful daffodil. When would you like these delivered? And it selected a date below. Now, I missed the fact that it said select a date below or type any day you want. But frankly, as a customer, that's not my fault, right? I said earlier on, if you have an app that's difficult to use, then and your customers say that, then the answer is it's difficult to use. Well, I, as the customer, missed the fact that I could type in my own date. So I looked at these 3 dates, and I was like, shoot, none of these are my wife's birthday. Do I have a none of the above option? So I decided to type in help. The bot quickly understood that I was looking to talk to someone in customer service. So it offered me that option to talk to support. So far, so good. I choose talk to support, and unfortunately what I get is, customer service is available from 8 a.m. to 12 a.m. Monday through Friday. This, unfortunately, was a Sunday. But it gets weirder after that. Then Samantha, a live agent, and I know she is a live agent because she has a spacing error in her typing, says, how may I help you? So I answer back to Samantha, hi, I was just experimenting because I haven't used a bot before, nothing specific, thanks though. She didn't know I was using it for a presentation. And all of a sudden, the next thing I get back is the bot again, which is now saying, well, what would you like to change? Recipient's info, arrangement, or looks good? And then Samantha answers me again, okay, Dan, please feel free to reach out to us if you would like any assistance. Do you see how quickly this content went from great content, where I was easily selecting a daffodil arrangement, to content which has really become a complete disaster? All right, so again, what do I need to do? Help me out with what I need to do. There's a couple things, and they're fairly straightforward. The first is, don't be afraid of complaints. Complaints actually give you tons of information about what's going on with your company, your product and your service, and what customers are not liking about it. And you can take that and not only solve the problem for the customer, but go back and fix the underlying problem so that future customers don't have that issue, thereby reducing your customer service expenses. Listen to your customers. They're going to tell you what they need, and they're actually going to tell you what content to create. Because if you listen to what they need and you create that content, you are by definition delivering the content that they're looking for. Use the feedback to fix what's wrong. If you go back and fix the underlying problems, then you are reducing the need for customers to contact you in the future, and you're reducing their frustration. But at the same time, you can also be creating content that addresses whatever the problem is so that people can self-serve. Now, you also can end up taking this feedback and creating new products. One of my favorite stories is about OtterBox, which is a cell phone case manufacturer, who was listening on social media and hearing a lot of people talking about bringing their phones into the shower. Now, their cases weren't designed for that, and Lord knows our phones weren't designed for that, but it gave the people at OtterBox an idea. What if we created a waterproof case? That's exactly what they did, and it became one of their big sellers. That shirt in the middle by ModCloth has images of actor Jeff Goldblum on it. Now, I don't know who would want to buy that shirt, certainly not I, but what I learned from talking with ModCloth is that they heard on social media that there was a huge crossover of their customers and big Jeff Goldblum fans. So they created a shirt with Jeff Goldblum's image, and it became one of their top sellers. Vega, which is a plant-based nutritional supplement company out in Canada, listened on social media and heard that people either loved the taste of their powders or despised the taste. There was really no one in the middle. So what did they do? They created a series of recipes for delicious smoothies that allowed you to hide the flavor if it was something that you didn't like. What an amazing thing to acknowledge to people, it's okay if you don't like the taste of our product, but we'll help you make it taste better. Look in social media for common questions. They don't call them frequently asked questions for nothing. There are lots of questions that are asked over and over and over again in social media, in chat, on the telephone, in email, even in mail if that's what you have. Listen for those. Pay attention to those. Those are your future content pieces. Because if people are calling you, or they're emailing you, or they're tweeting you with these questions, chances are they've already gone online to search for the answer and they haven't found it. But if your content was there, they would have found it. At the same time, look for what people are searching about. Don't just look at Google or Bing in the public space, although that's a great place to start. But look at your own website. When your current customers are logged in, what are they searching for? These are all great content ideas, because if people are searching for it, that means they haven't found it yet, and you can provide content to get out in front of that. Self-service is actually great for customer experience and also great for content. We like when our customers self-serve because it saves us money and it makes our process more efficient. But customers actually prefer to self-serve. I mean, how many of you want to call up an 800 number and talk to a customer service representative? Nobody does. If you can self-serve, then you're much happier. Plus, this kind of content serves to do the same things that we want our content marketing to do, to educate people, to inform them, to answer their questions, and eventually to persuade them to either do business with us or to do more business with us. The other thing I want to highly recommend is that you respond to everyone on social media. If they're happy with you, say thank you. Engage with them. Show them some love back. Appreciate the fact that they took time out of their day to tell you how happy they were. If they feel just met or if they're asking a question, make sure you answer their questions and engage with them and continue to educate them with more of your content. And if they're unhappy, be sure to empathize, engage with them, and try to solve their problem. You'll notice the word engage in all three of those, and that's highly intentional. By engaging with people, we're going to learn more about how they feel about their experience with us, and that's going to give us more ideas for future content. The last thing I want to leave you with is to have fun. Vega, that plant-based manufacturer of supplements, uses vegetable puns in a lot of their responses on social media, which of course in and of themselves are great content. And they use it because it fits with their brand, it establishes some humor and personality for the brand, and they get great responses from their customers. So don't forget to have fun when you're out there creating content and when you're out there serving your customers. Thanks a lot for listening. I really appreciate it.
Dan, thank you. Could you tell us a little bit about your book, how folks can get hold of it, and how people can get in touch?
Absolutely. So I have a brand new book that just came out last month. It's called Winning at Social Customer Care, How Top Brands Create Engaging Experiences on Social Media. And it is all about how dozens of brands who I've had the pleasure of interviewing on my podcast are handling all the stuff that we talked about today and how they're engaging with their customers in social media, answering questions, creating great content. So I encourage you to check it out. It's available on Amazon. It's available in paperback or Kindle format as well. And if you'd like to get in touch with me, I'm available on Twitter. I'm a very frequent tweeter and very responsive, just as I suggest brands should be. I'm at dgingus. Also at LinkedIn /Dan Gingiss. And my website is www.winningatsocial.com. And there you can find my blog and access to the podcast and the book and some other goodies as well. So please do connect, and I'd love to chat with you.
Dan Gingiss, thank you very much.
Thank you, Alan.